Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you this morning.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you this morning?
Doing fine. Are you doing okay, too?
I am doing well, yes.
That's good.
Indeed.
You're doing better than the country, then.
A little bit, maybe.
We're going to look for the good stuff.
That's right.
Some days it's more difficult than others, and today we'll have to search around a little bit. But, there was a lot of business news today on prices and things. And, when I glanced at it, nothing was, I considered the reports to be rather mild compared to the reports that came out during the 70s when they were adjusting to the closing of the gold window. But, the markets, that assessment, just general assessment, wasn't a very good one because the markets think something big is happening. They say, no, inflation is alive and well, and we have these problems. Gold has been up just recently. I looked, it was up $40 an ounce. That means there's some nervous tension out there, and those who had been predicted to 40 are predicting a lot more, which is a game they play, but there's a lot of instability there. I think what it does to me, I look at this that the reports are less reliable. Maybe the reports, maybe we can't handle the truth. We've already heard about the unemployment figures. They don't tell us the truth about unemployment, and I suspect that's true about prices too. And that's why we have to go do the housewife test, find out who's doing the shopping and what do they think. Anyway, we're not going to dwell on that. I'll probably visit with Chris tomorrow a little bit more on the economics. But I want to talk to you about what's going on in our government because people are concerned about what's going to happen when they start counting the votes. And some people that had control of corruption before are worried they may lose their corruption ability to go. So they have that to deal with. And now there's a move on. And one issue that we looked at earlier, that there's an effort at the Department of Homeland Security want to certify the election process. That to the finality of that, the Electoral College, because that's when the so-called insurrection occurred. Yeah. And so that now that's their excuse. They have to stop this, but it's just an excuse to advance their goal of tyranny. And that is what I think is happening. And what are they doing it in the name of? National security. Yeah. You can't be against national security. So and right now it doesn't look the hits we're getting about the Republican House of Representatives. It doesn't look like we have the guardians of the budget in the Congress.
Yeah. Well, let's turn this on because this is something we noticed on. You noticed on Politico and sent it over to me. We can't have any more insurrections, Dr. Paul. We've had just too many. Worst insurrection since the Civil War happened in 2021, as everyone knows. So they've got to prevent that from happening. So this is from Politico. Congress to get Super Bowl level protection on January 6, 2025. The Department of Homeland Security designates the verification of the 24 election a national special security event to prevent a repeat of the Capitol riot. Now, they didn't use the word insurrection, and I'm going to take issue with that. But go on to the next one. Now, this is from the article, and this is an interesting designation. National Special Security Event, an acknowledgement that the once routine part of the democratic process now carries a special risk. Now, that seems pretty suspicious to me, Dr. Paul, because if you remember, this is what Homeland Security has done since its creation. When you opposed it most vehemently, it just ratchets more control. TSA, now all of a sudden our election certifications, that from now on, no one's ever going to dial it back and say, well, it's really not a big deal anymore, we'll dial it back. So it's like a ratchet. It's like, a Crisis in Leviathan, our good friend Bob Higgs, his great book. Whenever there's a crisis, like January 6th, here comes Leviathan, cranking up the control.
What happens if Trump wins? And what happens if Trump loses and nobody does anything about it? If he wins, they're going to say, see what we prevented and all this problem. But what if Trump does win in their preparation and there are problems similar to before and much worse?
Yeah.
That means there are people who hate Trump are going to
Antifa.
react. And I was mentioning to you that all the things that they have done to trap Trump and to punish him and charges, impeach him, it was endless. He's always come out on top.
Yeah.
Even bullets, he's come out on top.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. So if that would happen, I think that the Democrats they won't know what to do. They'll get hysterical, and of course they'll have to build another lie.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, Dick Cheney will come in on a horse and lead the insurrection against Trump. And Liz will be behind him. That's what we'll have there, and Kinsey and all the guys. But go to the next one, because this is what it really means. Now, we're joking about it, but it's not unserious. So the designation empowers the Secret Service, wow, that's Secret Service, to lead security planning and provide extensive resources to state and local authorities, assisting with its implementation. Now, here's the part I underlined, Dr. Paul. It will mean unprecedented levels of security when Congress certifies the results of the presidential election. Now, what that means in real terms, Dr. Paul, and I don't know if you agree, but I suspect you do, that means they're going to prevent any kind of protest, any kind of assembly, even peaceful assembly. Get the heck out of town. Let us do what we have to do, and don't question it. That's at least what it seems like to me.
That makes my point. This is an excuse to expand the state and to expand the tyrannical powers that they're after, and has nothing to do with justice. And they're just looking for problems, and there's so many fallacies about January 6th, and we'll talk a little bit more about that and what's going on there. But it must be awfully frustrating, to the Democrats. But you know where I think the biggest frustration level is, and they don't know what to do about it, and I have no sympathy for them, and that is the Republican establishment who have been governors and different positions who turn 100%, and now they're bragging about endorsing Kamala. What kind of Republicans were they? What kind of liars were they then?
Yeah.
There had to have been some difference in the political scheme of things, but that's what that's a big thing that's going on right now.
And it would be something if Trump really was that different from a regular Republican. He's a little different, and we're happy about that, but he's not that different. But we tend to read Politico every day, and it's not because we buy their line. They can be, I think they're a little bit more honest in their reporting, but we understand their biases. They are in favor of Democrats. They are in favor of the D.C. blob. They are in favor of the foreign policy, and they hate Trump. But we read this and we get cues as to what, just like you did in the Soviet Union, you read Pravda to know what the regime thinks. And so that's why I clipped these couple of clips, Dr. Paul, because they're setting it up to say that we're going to shut down, we're going to lock down D.C. Not even a rat, not even a cockroach can get out of the sewer. And if you know D.C., there's a lot of both of those. But here's why they're going to do it. Here's the justification. Thank you. On January 6, 2021, thousands of Trump supporters who embraced his lies about a stolen election. So there they go, telling you that it was lies. And go to the next one. This is the same thing. They're setting it up. The January 6th Select Committee investigated Trump's effort to subvert the election, which I underlined. So they're basically teeing it up that Trump loses and people freak out again. But you made such a great point. Well, what if he wins? Are they still going to keep out Dick Cheney on his white horse coming in to save the day?
Yeah. But that whole thing about July 6th and the distortion there is, the Democrats were able to turn this into the argument over insurrection.
Yeah.
But I think the Republicans, I've never heard the Republicans trying to narrow down the charges. And I think this is not being dishonest, because this is really where I am on there.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't count all the votes.
Yeah.
Why couldn't they have made this whole issue? We believe that votes were counted, and we have evidence they didn't count all the votes, and some of the people that voted didn't count it, and some people, were manufactured.
Yeah.
So it should have been that, but instead the Democrats controlled the media, which helped them.
Yeah.
But I think it would have been much better, because if they don't count the votes, that's identifiable. So they're working on that. They'll say, well, we don't even know who voted last time, and it's all confusing. Now they're saying we should have voter ID so that we can at least check and see if they're legitimate. That makes them the most hysterical resistance to that. They'll use their name. Boy, do you think they give their name and address when they're applying for food stamps?
Yeah. Or to get a bottle of liquor?
Yeah.
But the thing, you're absolutely right. I mean, they didn't ask us for messaging. We would have helped them. But they could have said, hey, the people that were violent, the people that broke stuff, they should be in trouble. That happens anywhere. You should, like if you walk into a Walmart and break something and beat someone up, you should
not
go to
protected.
jail. Yeah. So yeah, in that case, but at the same time, as you say, but let's count the votes. That's all.
That should have been more complicated than that.
Well, yeah, speaking of the January 6th case, now they want to prevent another January 6th, while at the same time, this is an interesting juxtaposition. Our second story is that the original January 6th continues to fall apart. And go to the next clip because this is Just the News with John Solomon. And he came out with a piece yesterday. Justice Department drops nearly half of the pending obstruction charges in the January 6th case. Now, these people have had their lives ruined since 2021, and the charges keep being dropped, obviously because they don't have a case against them, or the cases they tried to do, when they stacked up multiple cases, you're going to face 85,000 years in prison unless you plead guilty to insurrection. They're falling by the wayside.
They say, well, Trump must have had good attorneys and everything else. This is a victory. This is strictly a legal victory. But maybe this is an admission that they had nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
Nothing there. We've checked it in. And they finally got to the point where we're moving into trying to prevent it from happening. We just better quiet it down or something. So if there's nothing there, there's going to be a different approach. Maybe that's what it was. The first item we mentioned, the Super Bowl level of protection.
Yeah.
They're shifting gears away from January 6th. They figure they won that, but we better quit talking about it. So.
Yeah. Well, go to that first clip on this. This is from Solomon's piece. That's been picked up, I think, by the Daily Caller as well. This is based on something that happened in June. The Supreme Court in June made it more difficult to charge the defendants with obstruction, which is a bogus charge anyway. But charges can still be brought if prosecutors can prove the rioters were intentionally trying to stop the arrival of certificates used to certify electoral votes. The department said last week that it had already dropped the charge in approximately 60 of the 126 defendants whose cases were still pending. It's still going to charge 13 of the defendants with obstruction and is still examining the other cases. So they're dropping the obstruction part of this. They're keeping the other issues. But again, it's just this trend where they went in and they hoovered up everyone, Dr. Paul, hundreds and hundreds of people, and threw them in a gulag. And then they'll trickle out slowly. After their souls are broken, their bodies are broken, their spirit is broken, their lives are ruined, they've lost their jobs, they have a scarlet letter on their forehead of I for insurrectionist,
Well, maybe they just needed reminded that there are some guidelines about having a speedy trial.
Yeah.
And how many years has this been going on, And I guess if the election wasn't coming up and the resistance hasn't dissipated, that they're still going to deal with it. But they say that they get out tomorrow, and a bunch of them may, be relieved of this. But how much pain and penalty have they suffered
already?
And who can you sue? What we should be able to do is sue the individuals who issue those orders.
Yeah, that would be good. Well, we see so many people let off the street who've committed horrific violent crimes with no charges.
Disgusting.
And you have these people. So anyway, we'll see. They are queuing things up, Dr. Paul, for what's going to happen after November. So we'll see. But the other thing, we like to talk about this a lot, which is hypocrisy and projectionism. The U.S. government accusing others of doing what it is doing. But do you want to talk about China, or do you want to talk about the Justice Department first?
Well, let's do the Justice
Okay.
Department, and then we'll go to China, because this is related to some way. Justice Department agencies have warned of budget cuts fallout, so they're worried about that. All of a sudden, they need more money for justice. It's always for good things. they want to get at the same time they want justice, but they're not going to cut anything. So there's a little bit of Republican resistance to this, but I imagine when push comes to shove, the big budget has to be passed. It has to be passed before the election. They've already capitulated on that. Everybody knows it's going to get passed, at least, but. But there's a lot of crying and screaming.
Yeah.
If you thought they were actually going to do it, now they were worried about the bill for Bureau of Alcohol Tobacco. I don't think they're worried about enforcing the Second Amendment.
No.
I think they need more to abuse the Second Amendment and the rest of it. So. Agencies have warned of budget cuts. There's going to be a lot of gnashing of teeth about this, and my guess is, unfortunately, the big government people are going to win this argument.
Of course, a budget cut means a reduction in the increase in spending. That's a cut. I give you $5,000, and the next month I give you 10. Well, I wanted 20. I got a reduction in my. That's how Washington works.
Right.
So we'll keep an eye. I mean, we know the Republicans are working on holding the line against this new budget, preventing a shutdown coming up, and it's really like Lucy holding the ball for Charlie Brown.
It was so weird about it. The shutdown, if they had a shutdown for a month, the kind that they've had in the past, most people wouldn't know about it. They we can't even go to the Washington Monument.
Yeah, that's what they do.
They always do a symbolic gesture
to
make people know there's tough times
make
ahead.
them feel the pain, and then all the staffers and everyone, they get all their back pay when it's done, and everyone is...
Well, since this country, we worry about this and we talk about it, there is a solution like cutting back. But the one thing you don't have to worry about is that there will never be justice, because eventually they'll get a lot less money. They'll get paper, but they're not going to have true currency. They're not going to have money. They're not going to have wealth. What they're going to have, get a lot of paper, and it's not going to work, and they'll wonder why. And of course, the real tragedy there, it's the middle class that's going to suffer the most.
Yeah, like always. Well, the last one we want to cover, again, as I suggested, is about hypocrisy. We've talked about it on the show. There has been a big crackdown lately. Apparently, the Russians are on the move. They're sucking out our precious vital bodily fluids and destroying our minds. There was the raid of Scott Ritter's house. There was the raid of Dimitri Simes's house, and apparently he's facing 60 years in prison if he ever comes back to the U.S. because he happened to do a program on Russian TV and got paid for it. There's been other crackdowns. There's this crazy case of this Tenet Media, I suppose, who supposedly is driven by Russia. They're trying to develop this narrative that the Russians are interfering in our media, and while they're getting hysterical saying that, put on the next clip, they are actually overtly passing bills to interfere in other countries' media. Now, this is from Responsible Statecraft. Marcus Stanley wrote this piece. House passes $1.6 billion to deliver anti-China propaganda overseas. And the subtitle is appropriate. Somehow it's a crime when Russia does it to us, but good information ops when we want to discredit Beijing's Belt and Road initiatives worldwide.
I imagine they had a very, very, very exciting debate over this because it might be a close vote because the Republicans are in charge, so I know they wouldn't go along with it. So I immediately went to, how did they vote this time? This is, all you have to do is look at the general picture here and declare, this is outrageous. When is this going to come down? Are they going to have wisdom before the election or after the election? No, they're going to have wisdom when their money doesn't work.
Yeah.
But this is what I found out. On Monday, the House passed H.R. 1157. The House, that's right. Republicans are in charge of the House.
That's right.
The countering the PRC malign influence fund by a margin, bipartisan margin, 351 to 36.
Yeah.
36 brave Republicans.
Yeah. And one of them is Thomas Massie. I checked. I didn't even need to check, but I did check.
That's
he would never go for this nonsense.
Boy. all I could think when I was looking at this, this is so outrageous. This really tells, right in here, it tells you where this problem is, because they're doing something they shouldn't do.
Yeah.
They're doing something that we are the champions are. We are the champions of worldwide propaganda because we have a lot at stake. We have an empire to defend.
Yeah.
They don't even have their empire yet. They're just trying to get their empire. But we have to defend our empire, so we have to, tell the noble lie. Otherwise, we could lose our stature, and it will cost us money. Our dollar may go down in value, and it could be an economic negative for us. But this is not good. This is one of the kind of things that if I read, when I get real cynical, what difference will it make with the election? And then you have to say, well, there has to be something a little bit better than who are the professional liars.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of those on both sides, but there's certainly more of a collection of those on the left side.
Yeah, well, Trump could put me in charge of USAID. I'll take care of it. Like he said, I'll fix it in 24 hours.
Yeah.
But put on that next clip, because this is what the money is for. Now, this is so overtly hypocritical. You read the vote, but after that, the legislation authorizes more than $1.6 billion with a B for the State Department and the USAID over the next 5 years to, among other purposes, subsidize media and civil society sources around the world that counter Chinese malign influence. So read that in English, and that means basically to subvert the media overseas. Now they'll say, we're supporting the independent media. As soon as you accept a nickel, I don't care if it's from Russia or from the US, if you're a press outlet and you accept a nickel from a foreign government, you're no longer an independent media. You're a state-sponsored media. And that's, everyone accepts that with RT. It's state-sponsored. They give the Russian line, take it or leave it. But with this, they pretend, oh no, they're independent. And the other is civil society sources. So that means that they're going to prop up NGOs around the world who nobody elects NGOs. But they're going to prop them up with foreign money to have them undermine things that they want undermined overseas. And that's a lot of money. Put on the next one. So that's a massive spend, and I underline this, about twice the annual operating expenditure of CNN. So the U.S. government is funding a double CNN overseas to subvert the media and to undermine the Chinese positions.
Where they're really, and I say we, in the United States propagandists, they're real experts. But where they really excel is if they're conditioning world opinion and conditioning the American people who will suffer the most and pay the bills. And that is preparing people for war. And we've gone through how many times over the years, whether we were in Washington or down here, trying to stop the propagandists, because hardly ever have any of these laws. Just think of how many lies were told, and we started to talk about that in 2014 over the lies told to say, and they still say, the day Russia invaded Ukraine.
Yeah.
But no preliminary, no coup, no taking over the government, nothing else. But they had to have propaganda, and it's always for national security.
Yeah.
If you don't do this, that you're not for the security of the country, or you hate the military. Those old arguments.
Yeah, exactly. And here's a couple more things about HR 1157. And by the way, you might want to call your congressman about it. I don't think it's passed the full, maybe it's passed, it hasn't passed in the Senate. Put this next one on. Now, this is a couple things that's very interesting now, because, go to the next one if you can. Crucially, HR 1157 doesn't seem to contain any requirement that U.S. government financing to foreign media be made transparent to the citizens of foreign countries. Now, if that happened to the U.S., that is going nuts. It is arresting people. You didn't reveal that these were foreign sources of this money, and they're arresting people. So we're doing the exact same thing. We are saying we're going to secretly give you money to prop up your media program overseas, and you can't tell. And not only that, but we don't know either. To put on that next one from the article. Because, and I underline this, some dimensions of U.S. information operations could be classified, it can be difficult to get a complete picture of the full range of what they look like on the ground. So they keep it from us. They keep it from the people in the, I would say, victim countries, victim of propaganda, and nobody knows. It's all secret. And you wonder why people start resenting the U.S. for the blatant hypocrisy.
You know, we used the word hypocrisy to introduce this article and this subject. But, you know, I think, Daniel, we need a different word. We need a stronger word. This is a lot worse than just plain hypocrites. There's a lot of levels of hypocrisy. I don't know, outrageous hypocrisy, the evil hypocrisy, because this is outrageous. And it's such a strong deception. And I guess we always have to go back to where we really work, and that's in the grassroots, trying to wake people up. You know, they should be looking for sources of this information elsewhere, but I think that I think it's already happened. You know, after this last debate, somebody said the station that was supporting it may lose some credibility over this debate. So the American people may be coming, instead of all being negative about websites and things like this and the internet, maybe there's a lot of good things happening there that we don't even measure, and not everybody is out on the websites and broadcasting, and we meet a lot of people who have their own little group. You know, they say they might have 100 or two, you know, years ago that have had zero. You know, you'd have to read the 3 major networks, and that would be it.
Well, you make a great point, because and I didn't clip it, but in the article they point out that the U.S. by doing this, by trying to secretly influence parties and NGOs and media overseas, they actually undermine the U.S. position. And the author gave the example of the Russian election, I think it was in 2011, where the U.S. was massively subsidizing the opposition parties with all of their media and all of their NGOs, and all Putin had to do was say, look, the people opposing me are dupes for the U.S. government. They're funded by the U.S. government. It actually strengthens Putin's position. Because who wants, like, if someone came in and pointed out with evidence that the Chinese were funding Kamala, people would say, I don't want that. I don't want someone else interfering in my election. So it actually undermines it. But the thing is that we agree with the premise of this. We would like to have the U.S. have a good image overseas. But doing it through subversion is not the way to do it. We can be an honest broker in the world stage. We can have free and friendly relations with other countries. We can have free and open trade with other countries. You know, we can be friendly. We can improve our own economy so they'll want to emulate us. Those are all the things you can honestly and genuinely improve our standing. But no, they want to do it on the fly.
And you know, I frequently make the point that, well, how do you engage? We don't. You guys, you're just a bunch of isolationists. You don't want to deal with people. Yeah, we like free trade, and we like travel, and we like dealing with people. And well, how do you influence them? And the way it happened for a good many years in this country, especially after the knowledge of the revolution and the Constitution occurred. People started knowing America was different, and it's by example. So that job is right here at home, and you don't go along with a bunch of interventionist spending, deficit financing, destroy the monetary system, don't care about our civil liberties, and do to foreign countries that we think is wrong. Yeah. And if you want to change the world, you have to first change oneself, and oneself means the people that have an image or contribute to the image of America. And right now, we're not doing so well on that, because I think there's 2 reasons. Because we have 2 bankruptcies. We have the financial bankruptcy, but we have a moral bankruptcy as well that we have to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to close out by thanking everyone for viewing the show. Please click that thumbs up or whatever it may be, the equivalent on whatever you're watching this show. In the description of this show, I have included a link whereby you can make a tax-deductible contribution to help keep the show going. We appreciate your continued support. for the Ron Paul Institute and the Ron Paul Liberty Report. Over to you, Dr. Paul.
Very good. And I want to close by re-emphasizing what I consider so outrageous, and that is the $1.6 billion basically pushed by a Republican Congress to manipulate and to propagandize and be such hypocrites in trying to change things by interfering, especially because they're driven by some irrational hatred of China. I know exactly who they are, and I know they have bad philosophy, but sometimes they come up with things that sound, wonder why we can't do that. You know, it's not like they're 110% wrong, but I'll tell you one thing, our policies aren't worth defending on many occasions. So that is our goal. We have to do our best to improve our image so others would want to emulate us. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.